Hello and welcome to episode 62. Now, I get asked a lot about the kind of tech skills that you need to get a remote job. But in reality, the tech you need to know is really not that much different from a co-located office role, since business of all kinds obviously is increasingly reliant on tech tools, systems, and tech stacks across all functions. So obviously we are talking tech today. But first, I offer 30-minute remote career consults. Just head over to stephanieholland.co/career consult for more information and to book. If you'd like a personalized remote career search strategy and just a way to simplify your career search and really just gain confidence from having someone who's done it before by your side, that's what you want to do. You want to work with me and head over to my website to book. So anyway, business is increasingly reliant on technology. Fact, right? So whether you work in an office or from your kitchen table with a team located around the world, each function is now said to have its own tech stack, which basically means the collection of tech tools and systems that are used to get work done. So for marketing, it's called a MarTech stack. So don't let that term confuse you when you see it in job specs and when people are talking about it, when they talk about their tech stack. Tech stack is just the collection of software, tools, or systems that are used by each team in business, each function within the business. Now, the number of tech tools that each company and team uses will depend on their business size, their model, their strategy, their output, whatever they're doing. Now, there's no one-size-fits-all tech skill set for the remote workforce, and that's why, which is why it might feel a little bit confusing and intimidating at first, because one company says they use these systems and another company says they use those systems, and all pretty much they're doing the same thing, but they're just different softwares and companies that those remote companies choose to work with. Now we're going to talk through each of the different types of tech typically used by remote companies, and you might be surprised that it's not that different from your previous office jobs in terms of the kind of systems they're using for the kind of purpose. So you won't have all the experience of all the tech tools that a company uses. I mean, likely not, right? Unless you're some super tech geek that studies tech you don't even use. That's perfectly okay, right? It's likely that you're going to learn new tools in each role. And of course, companies are prepared to onboard you knowing that you might not have experience in that tool. And they'll often have their own protocol for using that tool that they'll train you on. And they'll do that anyway, whether you've used the tool before or not. Now, the job spec that they specify will usually say which systems are required, what kind of tech experience is required, which is usually referring to your area of expertise or your profession, like a designer perhaps, and who they might specify that the designer needs 5+ years of experience using Adobe Creative Suite. And then they'll also specify those skills which are nice to have, like the more generic project management or communication tools like Slack or Monday, right? But again, those are easy to learn and you can learn them on the job. So anyway, let's go through the 5 different tech skill types that you need for your new or next remote role. So tech type 1 is the tools of your trade. So you'll already be familiar with the tech tools of your trade because you're already using them. Now, every business function, remote or co-located, uses the tools of the trade to operate. So for example, if you're in UX, you're likely to use either InVision, Figma, Sketch, or maybe even Origami Studio. Okay, there are dozens of tech tools that the UX design teams use. So you may have used Figma in the past, so that if a company uses Sketch, you're going to have to learn that new tool. But since it does the same thing, it's not that big of a stretch for you to learn a new software. And you're a smart cookie, so you can totally do that. Or maybe you're a designer and the company requires 5 years of experience in Adobe Creative Suite. Well, that just indicates that they're looking for a mid-level professional. And then you can decide whether you fit the bill for that and apply or not if you've got 4 years experience. But maybe bigger work experience using other software. I don't know, you decide. Tech type 2 is the tech tools of your team workflow. Now, each team within the company, marketing, design, development, etc., they have their own unique set of tools that they use to get their work done. Now, this is called a workflow. Now, I like the definition by Process Street, right? They say this: workflows are the way people get work done and can be illustrated as a series of steps that need to be completed sequentially visually in a diagram or a checklist. Now, each team across the business will all have their unique workflows and the collection of tools and systems that they use to get their work done. So even if you're in the design team and you're using your specific design software, there will be other tools and systems that you use to get that work completed to output stage, right? Within each team, you have specialized workflows, series or steps required to publish a blog post or a podcast episode or a social media campaign. And that's just creating the content. Of course, within marketing, we create content, we distribute content, we analyze the results, and each element, each of those has a different workflow, which means potentially a lot of different tech. And that's just for the marketing team. But again, all these tools, as an experienced professional, you'll be familiar with many of them. If not in practice, then at least by name, unless you've been out of the loop for the last decade, which is also possible if you're coming back after some kind of career break for whatever reason. But either way, here's the good news. You can train yourself on these tools. You can do a course, or some remote companies offer in-house training in their workflow tools. So again, don't let that intimidate you. You are smart. So tech type 3 is the tech for organization. Now, in the information age, organization is key, of course. Companies use many different tools and systems to organize themselves. And these are the tools you can totally learn on the job with no previous experience required. Now, if they're specified in the job posting, it's because, it's a nice to have or for informational purposes only, right? So they don't really expect you to be an expert on these kind of tools, just to kind of know this is what they use, this is what you'll be using. Now, Trello, Asana, or Basecamp, and sometimes simply Google Drive or Dropbox are the ones mentioned. And sometimes these are the same as their project management tools, and sometimes not, because a lot of these tools do a lot of different functions. Now, each company should have a formal protocol for using these tools that aligns with their values and culture. Sometimes not, but you can learn them more quickly by paying attention to how your colleagues are using them. And of course, each of these tools usually have blogs, tips, and webinar training for best practice and basic usage. Tech type 4 is the tech for communication and collaboration. Now, for communication, think email, online chat, video meetings, and maybe phone and text messages in terms of software and hardware. Now, on the hardware side, you're going to need to have a good quality camera and microphone and know how to use them. You'll have to get used to selecting the right input and output in the system's preferences of whatever tools you're using. You can Google it, or you can ask your friend, but never, ever, ever ask your company how to figure this out, or the hiring manager who's interviewing you. Now, this is something you do need to figure out for yourself and test before you need to use them. And often you'll be kind of tested as part of the interview process. They'll be thinking, can this person show up on interview? Will their mic work? And if it doesn't, that doesn't bode well for you. They will be paying attention to your ability to show up for the interview on time and with everything working, including your camera and your internet connection. So beware. On the software side, they might use anything from Slack, Flock, Fleet, Workspaces. There's a plethora of systems and tools in this area. But these are tools you can learn on the job, right? And again, there will be company protocol, hopefully, in place on how to use it correctly to achieve your company and team objectives. And just as a side note, not a tech skill, but we mentioned in episode 60 that writing is a really important skill. Not a tech skill. But anyway, Wade Foster of Zapier said, hire people who can write. In a co-located office, a lot of information is shared in person. In a remote situation, almost everything is shared via written communication. Communication is one of the most important parts of a remote team. Therefore, good writers are critical to a team's success. Okay? So, tech type 5. This is tech for project management, which often, like with organization and communication tools, different companies and teams use different platforms. Some are communication, collaboration, and project management tools rolled into one, which is actually really useful because then you only need to use one tool for all these three things, but sometimes companies have 3 separate tools. Now again, you can learn them on the job. Now each company should have a formal protocol for using these tools that align with their values and culture. But you can learn them more quickly by paying attention to how your colleagues are using them. And of course, each of these tools have blogs, tips, and training for best practice and usage as well. Final tech type 6. This is just tech for miscellaneous. Now there might be other tech types too, like time tracking apps or industry specific things that your company need tech for. So again, you can learn these on the job and the company will have protocol for using it. Now you can demonstrate your tech agility during the application and hiring process by uploading a video cover letter that you've uploaded to Vimeo or YouTube, or showing an online portfolio or CV on a web page that you've created or coded yourself. And just by sending a PDF so that Apple users don't have to convert a Word doc to view it. It's these little tiny touches that go unnoticed when they're done and blow people's minds when they're done really well, and leave hiring managers underwhelmed when they're not done at all. So there you go. It's not too confusing, right? I hope I've simplified that for you. There are 6 tech types, and the only the tools of your trade or profession are really the ones that are most non-negotiable. All the others you can potentially teach yourself, learn on the job, and follow company protocol for. So head over to Worksheet 10 in the podcast pack to get the cheat sheet so that you have a handy reference for the different tech types, and so that you can drop them into your CV or pepper them in your cover letter and interview in the form of questions about how companies do things. Because it's always really interesting to ask your hiring manager, what are the best tools for, or what tools do you use for communication within your team? What tools do you use to innovate and collaborate within the marketing team? Just asking the right questions shows that you are tech savvy, because asking things like what project management tool that they use alone will help you stand out from the crowd. Now if you don't have the worksheet or the podcast pack rather yet, don't worry, you can grab a copy in the show notes at stephanieholland.co/62. That's it from me this week. See you next week on Thriving Empire podcast, but until then, keep living and working on your own terms so that you can build your career and the life you really want simultaneously. See you next week. Bye.